Thank you, Mr. Master of Ceremonies, for your warm words and for running a smooth operation. Colleague ministers, other officials from the various missions here in New York, CTO officials, wonderful guests, presenters, ladies and gentlemen. Let me just say that it is a pleasure to be here again, to be part of one of these panels. The first week in June, of course, is known as Caribbean Week, and we normally converge to do business, to exchange ideas, to share information, to hear the latest that's going on in the travel industry. Of course, the travel trade, the private sector is well represented, but I know we have made it a point to have this Diaspora Forum. And I think that we have to continue to develop our relations. This is, of course, from a tourism perspective, but indeed from a national development perspective in how we reach out to the diaspora in meaningful ways. I would like to think that the message that the CTO has been trying to get through to its members is taking root. Certainly, in 2008, when I first started as a minister, there were very few destinations that had any formal programs with respect to how we can integrate the diaspora into the tourism experience. We had actually that year, or I think 2009 in Barbados, we started the BFF program, the Barbados Family and Friends Club, which was designed precisely to do that. In July last year, we had just over 1,500 members, mainly from New York, Canada, and the UK, which of course is not surprising. That is where you find the largest concentration of Barbadians outside of Barbados. But I think it's fair to say that several countries now have programs along the BFF lines as well. And I think that that is important because we know that informally it has been happening for many years. We all know the diaspora do a lot for tourism in the Caribbean, encouraging co-workers, fellow students, other people going to church with you, people from your neighborhood, encouraging them to take a vacation in the Caribbean. And it is often not recognized just how much the impact is. So having these formal programs, I think, is a necessary plus that we need to continue to acknowledge. But listening to Ms. Richardson's presentation, I'm also reminded of something very important about the diaspora, and that is the whole concept of investment. Very often, people like myself in public life in the Caribbean, when we're speaking of investment, we're talking of foreign direct investment, invariably a large transnational cooperation or some other funding agency doing some huge, massive infrastructural project. But the truth is that the micro investment in the context of tourism is extremely important. So I want to salute Ms. Richardson for what she's doing in terms of having a project in the Caribbean. And many others like her throughout the archipelago, or as a matter of fact, the entire basin. Only a few months ago, I was doing a CTO visit with the Secretary General in Belize, and Minister Herrera insisted that we go and see a place called the Black Orchid Resort. It's about a half-hour drive from Belize City, on an old river that was once transported mahogany and so on. And there's a very cute, quirky little resort there, maybe 24 rooms if so much, that was started by someone who basically lived in New York for many years and decided, look, I'm going back home to invest. A modest project that is actually getting rave reviews on TripAdvisor, et cetera, because, you know, again, investment, not necessarily the large-scale investment, but the diaspora and so on, coming back and investing in those little micro projects that are so important to enhancing the whole visitor experience. And so it is in that context that I would also like to see the diaspora view themselves, the opportunity to bring those projects back. Now, that's not to say that if, like Mr. Chen in Canada, one of the wealthiest people in Canada who happens to be of Jamaican extraction, if you can get the Mr. Chens to invest hundreds of millions, fine, we'll take it. In fact, I would like to get him in Barbados, to tell you the truth. But I'm saying I don't think we should discount these initiatives and these projects and what they're doing to enhance the whole tourism experience, and at the same time offer meaningful value to the Caribbean. I think that for too long, governments have been looked at the diaspora as, yes, the boxes and the barrels coming home during their working life, and of course retiring and coming home and making sure they can have, their vehicles and their furniture can be accommodated duty-free and such like. It's much more than that, and I think the skill set, the opportunities to network, now that we actually have the information communication technology so easy, we have to continue to capitalize on that. Like Jamaica, we do have a conference that every other year. We've had 3 editions of it now. The 4th edition actually will be next year, 2016, which will be the 50th anniversary of Barbados' nationhood. And we will also have an opportunity for the diaspora from all over the world coming to Barbados. Yes, mainly the US and Canada and the UK, but Panama, a lot of Barbadians went there 100 years ago to help construct the engineering wonder of the world, the Panama Canal. Tens of thousands of Barbadians went there, and it was good to have them back. The communities in Cuba, and even a small Barbadian population in Brazil that went there through the sugarcane industry, and having them all convene in one place, and again, network and look for those opportunities, and of course, staying in touch beyond that experience. So I think the message is getting through, and it is no longer a case of the diaspora being those relatives overseas that would send in a nice big barrel for Christmas. It is much more than that, and it is very heartening to see that we are taking them on board in a more meaningful way, and that they are becoming a part of the whole experiment in nation building throughout the Caribbean. And from a tourism perspective, it is good to see programs being crafted and being created that can facilitate that. So once again, I'm very happy to be here, and certainly I will take this opportunity to also respond directly to the president of the Brooklyn Borough and say that if I have anything to do with it next year, the Diaspora Forum will be where the diaspora are in Brooklyn. And before the CTO staff start to bristle and cringe, because I know the argument has been put that everyone can come to Manhattan, but where do you go if you want to have a diaspora forum? Well, we can rotate it. If you go to Brooklyn, you can go to Jamaica, Queens, you can go wherever. But I think it's important that we have at least one event in Caribbean Week in the heart of the diaspora. And if anyone thinks that I'm being an autocratic chairman, at least one other member of the Council of Ministers, who actually is the most senior one, Mr. Obadiah Wilchcombe, the distinguished minister from the Bahamas, he agrees that it should be held there. And I would like to think that between the two of us, we could convince our colleagues, and we shouldn't have any difficulty. So I know he had to go to a number of graduations, but we will accept the invitation from the president of the borough. And next year when we convene, we'll be doing this among our friends in Brooklyn. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chairman. In fact, you know, we used to have these in the respective bars, and I remember the last one we had in the Bronx. I think you were there, sir. And just to share with you, let ministers know that the diaspora has become a little more sophisticated and civil. But we remain passionate, all right? So even though we may gesticulate and all that kind of stuff, it remains right here, you know? It doesn't go any further than that. In fact, at this moment, I want to acknowledge our community leaders from the Caribbean who are in the audience this evening. Give them a round of applause, please. It must be church night. Normally we'd have more ministers out, but I don't see much. I saw Reverend Monroe. You're still here? Yes. Well, representation of the clergy is here. Welcome, sir. All right. I want to just change up the game a little. The minister started the match. It's a 2020, not a test match anymore. Those things take too long and ends up with no results sometimes. How do you figure? But I'm going to go to you, Minister Obi, because just recently, Bahamas was on stage on behalf of the Caribbean. And I'll say this as a person here in the diaspora. It was a warm feeling. As they'd say, I had goose pimples all over my body because I was happy that we were leading the world. Putting that into perspective, as it relates to hosting an endeavor like that, I just wanted to pigeonhole now to see what are some of the spin-off opportunities that you could begin to tell us here in the diaspora as we seek partnership, that we could begin to look at and prepare ourselves for in being a part of this endeavor. You can sit there.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Ladies and gentlemen, just before I respond to the question and speak to you about the Bahamas and our approach to the diaspora, I should like to recognize some of the individuals who have come with me this evening, inclusive of my Director General of Tourism, Ms. Joy Jubilew. And I'd also like to recognize a young man who several weeks ago became the Junior Minister of Tourism after an intense competition. Let's welcome Minister Ferguson. He is a part of the delegation because it is through events such as these that we are seeking to cause for the exposure, for the understanding of the work of the Caribbean Tourism Organization and for the import of tourism to our country. I think many people in the Caribbean take it for granted what we do, except when it's not working. Then you hear the complaints about the economy and everything else. But the truth is, tourism has been the bread and butter, particularly to our country. 60% of our GDP from tourism. We have done so much, and we're very proud of the fact that we have been a leader in the Caribbean Tourism Organization for many, many years. To the question that was raised, the truth is, I'm not sure, even with the President's proclamation, that we truly understand the impact of the Caribbean peoples to even the United States of America.
True.
I don't believe that there is an understanding of the role played by the great ones, even Shirley Chisholm or Malcolm X or Marcus Garvey. I don't think that there's a full understanding because I don't believe that we've talked about it enough. In fact, I have an issue still to this day that in 2006, when I served as a Minister of Tourism in the Bahamas for the first time, and I had just left office as chairman of the Caribbean Tourism Organization, we were faced with a very difficult situation. We were faced with the Western Hemisphere Travel Initiative, where the United States had made a decision that the traveling public of America needed to travel with a passport. And they gave just 1 year notice, and then it went quiet, and then 4 months. It would have been disastrous for the Caribbean had we allowed it to happen. But what did happen was the difficulty faced with trying to talk with your local embassy and then trying to get a meeting in the United States of America with the officials. It was through an American who helped me get a meeting with the United States and the Congress that allowed for some dialogue to cause for not a delay in real terms, but they went quiet on the issue for a period of time. Well, here's your problem. The problem is who knew about it and who cared about it. What it meant for the Caribbean was my concern. The diaspora, in my view, could have made the difference. Because whilst we speak of what we do at home, is the diaspora aware of all the things we face at home? And is the diaspora up to speed on the issues that we are having to deal with when we deal with a powerful nation like the United States of America? And do we know legislation that affects us, that turns our economies upside down, that restricts our growth and our development, and causes us to take more of the backseat as opposed to being leaders of the countries in the region that we ought to be? So how do we get the diaspora involved? How do we cause for the diaspora to understand that Bahamas is not Barbados, but we are one people? We're not Jamaica, but we are the same. We have the same issues, and some pieces of legislation passed in the United States of America causes so many difficulties for our nations. And so how do we cause for greater understanding, and what do? We can have the forum, but could I suggest, Mr. Chair, that we need to have even more? We need to have discussions about legislation. We need to have discussions with the American government about legislation that could be supportive. If you think about travel to the region, you think about the high cost, and think about the taxes associated with those costs, and think about what we can do and how can we cause a reduction of some sort. What can we do to facilitate movement of our people through the region? And so why can't we consider, and if we go to Brooklyn next year, and I do support the chairman, why can't we have an event? Or why can't we have events such as Diaspora Day, where we're able to sit and put on the table a series of issues, a series of discussions and events centered around the diaspora, centered around our commonality, centered around causing for a greater understanding of who and what we are. Think about it. When we staged the question that was posed by the chair, when we staged the IAAF, it was the Caribbean. Let no one fool you. Our stadium was packed. Televisions all over the world were on. The media from every corner of the world was there. And let me tell you, it's because Usain Bolt was there. Let no one fool you. He is the draw. He is an iconic figure in the region. But so is Bob Marley. Bob Marley still impacts the world today. But do we utilize and do we celebrate, or do we allow others to celebrate our people more than we celebrate our people?
Hear, hear.
And do we have events? And why can't we, through the diaspora, have a major event here in the United States where we do celebrate these people, where we do have an honor event for some of our great men and women? All you're seeking to do is draw attention to the import of the people, the impact of the people, and to create business to the Caribbean. As for business opportunities, what's important here is when members of the diaspora come home and seek opportunities, we should ensure that they obtain the same benefits as we do for the foreign direct investor. The truth is, the foreign direct investor will get the incentive package, and sometimes we wonder if we do the same for our own. And we have to be very careful because he's not the big businessman. He doesn't talk about the big dollars, but the truth is he is going to have an even greater impact. Because what I find with our people is when we put our stake down, we have a vested interest, and we're not going to pack up when things get real bad. We're going to stay and fight it out. And to this end, I'd wish to celebrate two individuals that I don't believe that in the region we have celebrated enough. Two being Butch Stewart and the other being John Issa. Butch Stewart in particular, because look what he has done around the region. He has in fact done what we're supposed to be doing in terms of Caribbean integration. He has taken his money, he's invested it around the region, created job opportunities, and created economies in some places through tourism. Now, he's a hero. He's a hero in the region, and it is my view that those are the people we should be celebrating because he's doing what should be happening because the smaller nations are not having more difficulties than Bahamas, Barbados, Jamaica. But the truth is we could do so much more. I was in Haiti 2 weeks ago, and it was an interesting visit because we're talking about how can we cause for multi-destinational travel. It can happen. It can happen with us working together. It can happen with the diaspora working with us. There are 3 million or even more, I understand, in the United States of America, of people of the Caribbean. Well, just imagine if we are bringing those people home and those people are helping us. They become our greatest marketers for tourism. And finally, on the IAAF, that was great and that was successful. It was followed by Carnival for the first time in the Bahamas. And Carnival for the first time in the Bahamas was a great success. We mixed our Junkanoo, our traditional celebration, with the Carnival, the brand, as a marketing tool. What happened was we had more people from the diaspora come to the Bahamas for the celebration, and they thoroughly enjoyed it, and they knew one thing, that they were home. We might be different countries and different islands, but the truth is we are one. And we might be different in terms of where we are located, but the truth is the commonalities are greater than the things that divide us. And if we work harmoniously, then certainly we can cause much more to happen for our region. And so whilst I celebrate the proclamation, I also wish us as Caribbean people to do more, to cause for a greater understanding of the impact that the Caribbean people have had on nations such as the United States of America.
Thank you very much, Minister. I have some sad news to share with you. The Adidas Grand Prix takes place on the 13th of June. And the Honorable Usain Bolt is the feature. There are no standing rooms available. They've been sold out. All right, so Johnson, I'm sorry, you were hassling me for tickets. No tickets. I can't get you any tickets. So, and again, it goes back to what you're saying. He's the draw. All right, and it's Caribbean, because when that happens, it's about Caribbean. Kirani James, the same thing. And these are some of the situations. And I do endorse what you say, sir. We need to begin to celebrate some of those individuals who are being recognized globally. We seem to follow back up everybody. Let us take the charge and go forward with it. Thanks very much for that contribution, sir. Now, if you might recall, I kind of muffed the introduction of our representative from Tobago, and I'll tell you why. I have a bit of paper here that says, this person's full title is this. Secretary Davison Celestine's full title is Assemblyman Tracy Davidson Celestine, Deputy Chief Secretary and Secretary for Tourism and Transportation. So I'm reading it, and I see Assemblyman, and I look over there. So I look back to, I was told that that's the right title, Ms. Celestine. So again, I apologize, but I prefer to err on the side of caution and make myself to be a buffoon in the process. But, you know, I saw Assemblyman, and we live in a gender-sensitive society, so we must be cognizant of that. So, Tobago, I like to present the next opportunity for you to address, but I also like to throw in there that we see the marketing of Trinidad, and we see the marketing of Tobago. And I know at some point the money is coming from the same place. But I also recognize too that Tobago brings to the marketplace possibly a different format in their tourism than does Trinidad per se. Share with us for the diaspora in your terms and what you would like us to know of Tobago from the perspective of things that would be of interest to us as a visitor to Tobago. Ms. Celestine.
Pleasant good evening to each and everyone, and let me recognize all the ministers who are here with us today, as well as the ambassadors and those who represent the CTO as well, and those who would have come to listen to this presentation. I would say that Trinidad and Tobago, 2 islands, 1 country, but at the same time, 2 distinct offerings in terms of tourism. Trinidad is more business-oriented, and Tobago has a leisure product. And so you would find that most of the beaches, the warmth and friendliness of the people can be found in the island of Tobago. And so, though they are 2 distinct, though we have the Tobago, the Tourism Development Company that has the overall responsibility for marketing the destination of Trinidad and Tobago, you also have the Tobago House of Assembly, which has been given its authority via Act 40 of 1996, and so the Division of Tourism and Transportation also has the responsibility and the mandate to market Tobago and to ensure that the tourism product is one that is developed. Tourism in Tobago is one of our major income earners on the island. We have been doing quite a number of different activities in terms of promoting the destination to our traditional markets, which is UK, Europe, Germany, and we are also now looking to move into other destinations such as Brazil. And in January of 2015, we partnered with Barbados to have a new and direct flight coming to Tobago. So we are looking at new markets as well, and we have some of our representatives who are now in countries like Latvia and China looking to develop and to forge relationships. And so you find that though we collaborate, which is Trinidad and Tobago, on many different marketing initiatives and a number of different projects, you would also find that Tobago tries to stand out because of the uniqueness and the different culture and the different product that Tobago has on a whole. In terms of our diaspora, we have been doing quite a lot to attract diaspora investment to the destination. And I note in particular all the work that we have been doing with the Tobago Canada Association. They are a very, very active association in Canada, and very often you would find that we will sponsor different programs in Canada with a view to having more collaboration between Tobago and also Canada. We have also recently signed on with G98.9, which has a very large diaspora fellowship where we will highlight different festivals and different activities and different programs with a view to getting more diaspora to come and to be a part of those offerings. Outside of that, there are endless opportunities in Tobago at this time. We have over 55,000 persons. Our mantra is clean, green, safe, and serene. We have our comprehensive economic development plan, which speaks to a number of different pillars for developing Tobago as a destination. We have the Cove Eco Industrial Development Park, which is geared towards light manufacturing, and we are hoping that our diaspora can come back and invest, because right now Tobago is opportune for business, ripe with business opportunities. Tobago is a relatively stable economy. Our unemployment is at about 4%, which is basically full employment. We have excellent infrastructure on the island. We have excellent, a well-developed transportation system between Trinidad and Tobago. And most importantly, we have an international airport and endless direct flights to the destination as well. So we have the infrastructure, and we have also a well-developed cadre of individuals. We know that the government would have had free education for people, so you would find that quite a lot of our Tobagonians have access to first degrees and are now pursuing second degrees, so to speak. And so we have all the amenities, we have the infrastructure, we have the people, we have access to gas and oil, basically, and then our proximity to markets in the Latin and South America also make Tobago a pristine and the place for investment, so to speak. And so it is now for the diaspora to look to come back to Tobago and to invest as much as possible.
Okay, thank you very much. Are representing Grenada. You have your feet to the ground. You have your ears of the people. You understand some of the challenges that the diaspora faces. But taken from a standpoint of opportunities, what are you hearing in your community as it relates to some of the things that they would like to see happening as it relates to relationships with the Caribbean? And in this case, Grenada, but I think when you really blow it out, it's actually the Caribbean. What are you hearing? What do you say now? Your Prime Minister is not in the room, so speak freely. What would you say are what your country people are saying?
Thank you, Hoping. Members of the panel, ministers, CTO officials, brothers and sisters. As it relates to diaspora, members of the diaspora here, how they view investment, how they view the relationship with the country. I think it's important for us to recognize that after the Jamaicans started the diaspora initiatives many years ago, other countries in the Caribbean followed the Jamaicans. And many of us are now trying to catch up on what it really means to speak of the diaspora. I think sometimes we speak of the diaspora as in one angle, not the people coming from home to be here and getting support from the diaspora, or we speak of the people from here going back home. Many of the diaspora people here believes that when the government speak of diaspora, they speak of money, bringing money home, coming home, the barrels, the support, and so on. And we have been doing that for many years. But what is important for the diaspora is policies by the different governments to give the diaspora some form of stake in the development of the country. If we don't have policies by the governments, you leave the diaspora wondering how they could contribute. And if we cannot find unity among the different islands, sharing knowledge, for example, the Jamaicans should be sharing their experiences with us, the other islands. The Usain Bolt, who they know how to market Usain. I wish that we could find how to market Karani James so we could help to get more investment in Grenada. So we have to find a way how to do that. Added to that, the governments, when policies change back home, when discussions on policy, we must find a way to have the diaspora involved in that discussion. If we want the diaspora to really have meaning, they must have a stake in the development of the homeland. Recently we had, that's Grenada, we had constitutional reform. And they came out to the diaspora for discussions as to what they see as part of the new reform for the Constitution. We ought to have much more of that. So we cannot continue to speak of diaspora but not having the diaspora fully engaged in the discussions as to what we want to do. The investment is important, but they must feel that they have part of that investment. And I think one of the biggest problems too is that we take the diaspora for granted. We don't advertise, we don't do the PR with our diaspora. We believe that the PR should go to the non-nationals to bring them home. And because we believe that the diaspora will go home at all costs. But if we get 50,000 nationals going back home, if we advertise, we probably will get 150. If we give them reasons to come home. And as such, the investment that we speak of today, we must give them reasons. We must ask ourselves whether the policies that we have for the non-nationals to invest, whether we must keep that same policy or do some changes to that policy to encourage our nationals to come home and invest. Because just saying, come home and invest is one thing, but how do we get the dialogue with them? How do we engage them? How do we give them the incentives to come home and invest? And I think that is what is important for us.
Okay. Thank you very much, Ambassador. And in fact, those are some of the issues that I know will be heated discussions at our next Diaspora conference in Jamaica. And as you know, we are always availing ourselves to help each other in sharing the blueprint, what we're going through. Because trust me, although Jamaica may have been way out in front, it's still a cantankerous situation where we all meet to sit down to discuss stuff. But it's part of our culture, I gather. At the end of the day, it's about finding the right solutions. But as I heard you speak, I must bring to your attention, and ministers are here just so that you understand how sometimes certain things, when said in public, how though they may be parochial in intention, we're in a world today that what you say at the side of your street becomes viral instantaneously. And I'm taken back to a headline recently in the Jamaica Observer in Jamaica that says, "Stay away." And without saying from whence it came. But here was a senior minister of one of our beautiful islands basically saying, if they want to celebrate their own cultures, that means wave their flag and have a nice day and all that kind of stuff, then they should go back to their respective nations. We here in these United States, Caribbean nationals outside of the respective islands, we wave more flag and support our respective nations and even those backyard. That is fact. Isn't that so? That's what makes us unique. That's what makes us hold on to our culture and represent. Now, it is kind of discouraging when we hear our brothers and sisters saying that at home to us. And so I'm just saying that people like myself were very offended by that statement. And I can only hope that it was, as they say, a slip of the tongue with a microphone in front of you. I want to take this opportunity to recognize the members of the staff of CTO for their continued good service to the region here in North America. And so when you see them, just tap them on the shoulder and say, good job. And you're fighting for a wage increase for them. Simply Beautiful is that island, St. Lucia. And right, Minister? Could you hand him the mic up? We didn't hear that. I said Simply Beautiful. And you said?
Most definitely.
All right. St. Lucia, of course, one of our gems in the Caribbean. What is it you have to share with us as relates to your tourism product and where the diaspora fits into it? Minister.
Good evening to my fellow panelists, ministers, other dignitaries who are here present, members of the diaspora and the media. One of the things that we have decided we have now put into action as a government of St. Lucia is something which emanated from our pre-election days. We noted the significance of the diaspora. We note the fact that beyond the relationship that we have shared with many of the foreign territories, the United Kingdom, the United States, and Canada, beyond the trade relationships that we have had with them, one of our largest exports to these territories has been the diaspora. And in the diaspora, we have the intellectual and financial capacity that have helped to develop many of these territories. So we sought to tap into this in a significant way. And in tapping into this, we have now in St. Lucia launched a diaspora marketing initiative. We call it C'est ça nous, meaning it's our thing. What this does, It is that it allows us to embrace the diaspora in a strategic alliance that exists between the St. Lucia Tourist Board and our diaspora. We know as a question of fact that our diaspora exceeds by 500% the number of travel agents that we are actively engaged in the business with to market our individual territories. Their stake in our islands is a fiscal one. The stake of the diaspora in the various islands goes way beyond that. Our diaspora, we find, has been actively engaging in the selling of our various islands for many decades. They do so without reward. But we believe that it was about time that we formalized this arrangement, formalized it in a manner where we as a St. Lucia Tourist Board can engage in the active registration of members of the diaspora. We can engage in training them. When you become a registered agent, as it is, an agent for marketing the diaspora, what we do is that we engage in active diaspora training. So what it does is that we give you a package. The package will have a thumb drive. It will have various little things about the destination. But it also enables us to group you and train you in the same way that we train the various agents to sell our destination. It also opens you up through the online registration service that we have to be open to an app which is going to be developed, which is going to enable the various people within our diaspora to be updated. We know as a question of fact, some of the people within our diaspora have not been to our island sometimes for decades at a time. With good government, I'm sure some of my colleagues will agree to that, we know that changes within our various islands can come within a year, significant changes. And the diaspora need to be updated with those changes so that in selling the destination, they sell something which is accurate, something which is current, something which is relevant, and something which is exciting. So through our diaspora program, what we do is that we have these constant updates, and we enable us to engage the diaspora actively in the marketing of our destination. But we've gone further as a destination, beyond the CESANU program, which is indeed a very good program, which we hope will be, one, the foundation for further development. We believe that from this CESANU program, we can encourage persons within our diaspora to engage in the establishment of business entities which are specific to the marketing of our individual destinations. And we believe it can come out of that program, and with this as a genesis, we can see the further development of these entities aimed at marketing our island. But the government of St. Lucia believes that with the diaspora, with the interest that they have in the diaspora, we needed as a government to put things in place so as to enhance the investment opportunities that there are within the destination. We as a government have gone through and we've passed specific legislation. Before tourism became the mainstay, it was agriculture. And now it is tourism. Second is agriculture. So we've had the passage of incentive legislation, the Agricultural Stimulus Act and a Tourism Stimulus and Development Act. The purpose of these two pieces of legislation is to ensure that we can give the incentives across the board to persons, both foreign and local, to enable them to invest in the two industries which are the mainstays of our economies. So these two acts, whilst they exist, hopefully before I leave New York, I will complete the reading of the Creative Industries Bill, which I have upstairs to comment on. And hopefully before the end of this year, we will also see the passage of the Creative Industries Bill, because I also am the Minister of Creative Industries in St. Lucia. And with the Creative Industries Bill, we can give incentives which will lend to the support of the creative talent in the island. The support that we give to the creative talent, we believe, is paramount. Because whilst each of our islands, I mean, St. Lucia, you said simply beautiful, yes, because we are. The Bahamas has its own unique beauty. So does Barbados, Tobago, Grenada, and the other parts of the Caribbean. But what exemplifies us, or what makes us unique, would be the experiences that we create for the various visitors to our shores. And these experiences are created based upon our enhancement and the focus on the uniqueness of our cultures, the diversity of our cultures. The Creative Industries Bill will enable us to give incentives so as to enhance things which we thought were just traditional, but these things are unique and are important to the selling of our various islands. So with this Creative Industries Bill, we will enable persons who want to do things, including the export of our talent. As was mentioned before, talent such as Bob Marley, talent such as Usain Bolt, Karani James. Anytime these talents are displayed overseas in any shape or form, whilst it focuses on themselves, it focuses on the islands and it focuses on the Caribbean as a region. So we need to enhance and develop those talents. Our dancers, singers, musicians, songwriters, our pottery makers. So the various bills, including the last bill that I mentioned, will enable us to focus on those skills, focus on the uniqueness of our island. The other thing that we have done as a destination is that we have established an entity called Invest St. Lucia. And what Invest St. Lucia is that it is a one-stop shop. It means that any investor who needs to invest in the island, instead of coming to the Ministry of Tourism, instead of going to the Ministry of Agriculture, instead of going to the Ministry of Health, they could go to this one entity. And this one entity is empowered to touch on the legislation, on the investment legislation of all the various ministries. It has direct access to the Development Control Authority. It has direct access to some of the incentives which existed only under the Special Development Act, which was, in essence, is an act which operates through the Office of the Prime Minister. So this one-stop shop, which can be found online as well, enables any investor who is desirous of investing in the country to come there and be able to take advantage of a wide range and scheme of investments that exist within the island. So it is our own unique way of ensuring that the doors of the island are open to investments and that the opportunities are made easier for the various people, both foreign and local, to invest within our island.
By the way, Ambassador, you said some things there which I'm not going to let you escape from because I want to hear what are some of the policies that you want to identify because, you know, I want to get closer to exactly what that all means because I like what you're saying and I want to hold your passion. So think about it. I'm coming back to you. Not right yet. At this point, to share with the experiences of what their diaspora is all about and what they're doing, I'm going to call on Mr. Maxwell Haywood, who is the chairman of the St. Vincent and the Grenadines Diaspora Committee of New York, to make a brief presentation. Maxwell? You aren't ready? I'm sorry? No, man, come up here, man. We want to see you. Give him a round of applause as he comes forth. And he's from Kingstown, not Kingston. Right? Mespo? Mespo? New Grounds. Okay. I've never been to New Grounds.
I think that name was taken from all in our history when that village was close to a plantation. So I think when the enslaved were freed, they went into the hills. And then they called that place New Grounds, away from the old grounds of slavery. Anyway, I just want to share with you briefly what we have been doing in New York as the Vincentian Diaspora Committee, because we are taking a kind of special approach to diaspora affairs. And this is what we are doing. We realize that all this talk about getting diaspora people to go back to the Caribbean and so on, and if it is not happening the way we want it to happen, I think we need to consider some reasons why these things are happening. When we look in the diaspora communities here in North America, we're seeing a number of gaps. One of the gaps is the area of lack of vital diaspora institutions that could serve as agency for people to do work. When we look in our diaspora, we realize that we are doing good things, but there is no institutionalization of those good things. So what happens is that when one generation passes on or retires, all that they have done, stay on the shelf and catch dust. And the younger folks have nothing to really, as a reference point, that they can use to push forward. So we have noticed that. And what have we done? We have built something called, in our organization, an institutional building initiative. And we have done it in 4 areas, or 5. One is that we have initiated the building of a Vincentian Diaspora Chamber of Commerce as an institution that will help us to do what we are supposed to do here. The second thing that we are doing is that in the Vincentian community, if you know sports in Brooklyn, you will know that the Vincentian sports teams have done a tremendous amount of work and have achieved a tremendous amount of successes. But again, there is no serious institution to anchor those achievements. So what have we done? We are serving as the catalyst to bring all of those teams together in an umbrella organization that will be able to properly mobilize the sporting resources of our diaspora that can help to anchor us here better and to contribute to sports development in St. Vincent. The other area that we are working on is to do the same thing with the cultural arts people. There is a rich, very rich community of cultural arts people in the diaspora. But there is no central body or bodies to help to bring them together so the forces can be stronger. And we are now doing that. We are also moving to do the same thing with women and the same thing with youth. So in the next year or 2, when you look in the Vincentian community, what you are going to see are institutions that can actually sustain what we have been achieving over all of these decades, instead of letting it go to waste. That's one area. Quickly, the other area that we are working on is the whole question of influencing public policies. Very critical. And how have we done that? We have looked at not only policies here in North America, but policies back home. So for instance, St. Vincent and the Grenadines several years ago reviewed its cultural arts policy. And our organization served as the catalyst to mobilize the Vincentian population here in North America to actually contribute to the development of that national cultural arts policy. And what is interesting is that when you look at the document now, you would see the many recommendations that we have made actually integrated into that cultural arts policy. And we did the same thing for sports. We did the same thing for the constitutional review. And we did the same thing for the development of the National Economic and Social Development Plan. So I hope you're getting me where I'm going with this. Because we should not just be cash cows as diaspora people. Quite often, Caribbean countries see diaspora people as cash cows. But when the concept of diaspora is beyond that. Investment is not only cash investment. Investment, in my view, means putting something in and getting something back. So it's not only cash, it's also ideas, technology, and skills, and even attitudes. Yeah? The last area that we are working on is raising awareness. Yeah? Diaspora people still have not fully internalized the power of a diaspora. There's an explosion right now of publications on diaspora issues. Where I work, tomorrow, there will be a major event at the United Nations. There was a major one last week, and what they were looking at is the role of diaspora in the context of financial development. How diaspora play a role in, and a lot of companies were there discussing matters, our matters. Tomorrow, there will be another meeting at the United Nations, all the meeting, dealing with the role of diaspora in humanitarian affairs. So what I'm saying here is this, that there is a huge body of knowledge and experience that have been gained by our diaspora. But guess what? We who are making history are not aware that we are making history. And that is a travesty of justice. Because once we are aware that we are making history, we will be able to tell it in a conscious way, and document it in a conscious way. So far, we are not seeing that. So what we have done, for example, we have started something called a Diaspora Leadership Institute in our diaspora. And we have done 2 major diaspora workshops so far on the theme of migration, development, and diaspora. And this year, we had a major one looking at women, migration, and development. So there's a lot of work to be done. International Migration Day. We Caribbean diaspora need to do a lot of work around that question, because we are not out of the woods yet in terms of migration and the dynamics of that. So I just want to share those few activities and initiatives that we are doing that would help to get more of our people to appreciate where they have come from and to increase the tourism flow from our diaspora back towards the Caribbean. There's much more I could say, but I have to respect the time, and I will end here with this brief presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Haywood. You see, the next time when we own the place that we have this kind of events, and we can sit there and talk all night, all right? And it goes back to this. We mentioned about influence public policies. But one of the things that, and we have to call a spade here, we are plentiful in our littleness, and yet we are collectively weak. We own the houses on the block, and yet we don't control the block. Where am I going with this? Many Caribbean nationals today are now citizens of the United States. Something that our foreparents died for, to give us that privilege. Are we truly exercising it? Are we? No, we're not. Because if you look at the positions we find ourselves, because when we start talking about influencing public policies, guys, if we're not at the table, it's not going to happen. We can stay outside and cuss and throw all kind of words. If we're not voting and electing people who we hold accountable, it's not going to happen. So we're here passing our commentaries to our ministers and hearing what they say and what we demand and what we need. But we also need to organize our houses right here. Because if we don't do that, I'm seriously speaking, I'm not certain that our peoples back home are going to take us seriously. We have to go with an organized plan. And that way we can truly maximize and leverage from whence we are from. You see, today's diaspora is quite different from yesteryear's, ministers, because we're now more sophisticated, and we have a lot more opportunities. And I hear the arguments about marketing to the diaspora. We too want to be marketed to. And when you do market to us, you're getting a 2-for-1, because we are also truly ambassadors of our respective regions. We're at that point in the session where we are going to open the floor for a few questions. But I just want to go back briefly to Ambassador James. And, you know, he touched on the subject that I just went back to, and that is policies. Instead of speaking in generalities, if you can narrow it down to some specifics, something that we can bite into and look forward to, looking at it to see if we can achieve it, so when we come back next year, this will not just be a talk shop. Ambassador?
Thank you. If we may look at remittance, we can develop a policy to open up some level of getting the remittance that we send back home. The cost of remittance is very high. It's about 15% sending back the money home. And if we develop a policy and go into what they call mobile transfer, some of the African countries already start using mobile transfer. That will bring costs down, and only legislations and policies that will drive that. So we could help, we could look at find a way to bring that down. On a question of the untapped skills, returning nationals, there are a lot of people returning home, and they want to contribute. But instead of them give them the opportunity, they will go back, no policy there for them, they go back home and they sit. If we can find a way to say to those nationals, you're coming home with this skill, when you return, if you give us 2 years of service, and for that we can cut on your amount of taxes you pay to return and the taxes you have to pay locally. If we do that, we're going to encourage more of our nationals to come back home and give their skills. The untapped skills also, we're looking at some of the members of the diaspora who wants to go to other countries, and there's no policy in place to assist them also. And I'm not talking about any specific country that these policies should be developed, but the Caribbean, the CARICOM, should look at policies throughout the CARICOM, as the CARICOM nations having policies developed for our diaspora. The media, we also have to find a way to get our media to educate our nationals back home and to educate our nationals here, because one of the things you see, a lot of us, when we go back home, our nationals home believe we're coming to take something from them. And they'll drive us away, they'll run us when we go back home. We open a little shop, they feel that you come to take something from them and not knowing exactly the purpose you're coming to help to develop the country. The question of double taxation. I know sometimes Barbados had something to do, they had some policy on the double taxation, especially the people coming from England. When they return home, they pay the taxes there, and then the monies they get back, they have to be paying taxes again when they reach back home. That is a policy that we have to look at, to cutting the double taxation. Recently, there was a policy driven by the United States, I think it's still on, where people had, if you have over $50,000 US invested in the Caribbean, you have to pay the taxes on it. And some people have been withdrawing the monies from the banks in the Caribbean because of that policy. I think that CARICOM has to find policies to have discussions with the United States government to allow our nationals to be able to save some monies in the Caribbean, because those monies that have been saved in the Caribbean is useful and is being used to develop other countries. So I think it is not just the local policies we have to think about, but I think CARICOM as a region, CARICOM as a whole, the CARICOM leaders have to develop CARICOM policies for the diaspora.
Okay. At this point, we're going to open the floor for a few questions. We have a movable microphone. Just put your hands up and I'll acknowledge you. When you come to the microphone, say your name, and it's a question. If you have a brief statement, make it brief.
I realize that many of the sending countries at one time looked to diaspora for remittances. But we have gone beyond that.
And many countries are looking to the diaspora as a tool for development. The question is, how conscious is that diaspora in terms of the need of the sending country? And I'll give you one example briefly, and then the panel can comment on it. Some years ago, I used to be agriculture minister in St. Vincent. When the United States challenged the preferential treatment for bananas going into United Kingdom, into Europe, let me say that the ACP countries had about 3% of the world trade in bananas, and the American multinational companies had about 97%. Yet they challenged the 3% preferential treatment into Europe and put our market into jeopardy. What did the Caribbean diaspora do about that in the United States? How did you hold those who you vote for accountable that the vote does not go into your interest, against your interest, or become detrimental to your interest? And that's what I'm thinking of, that the diaspora today has to go beyond remittances and become a conscious tool for development by safeguarding those policies that pass that are detrimental to your interests. I'd like to hear the views on that.
I think you'd appreciate that I support your position, and I understand because I had the same experience. But the problem is if the diaspora is unaware, how do they respond? I think the Master of Ceremonies said it so correctly when he called on the media to also help us in this exercise. If you do not inform a democracy, then your democracy cannot be participatory. You have to ensure that the people you wish to work with you. Well, in our country, when we were faced with the WHTI difficulty, I had difficulty getting the information around the Caribbean. So I decided to go to the United States and try to get in the door somewhere or the other, because there were so many Americans who did not have passports, and that's our principal market. What were we to do? What were we to do in January, February, March, when we can't meet our debt because our tourism industry has fallen apart? So we had to knock on doors. I was hoping at the time, through our Bahamas American Association, that they would become the principal advocates. But we didn't have time. But if we had an organized diaspora through the CTO or any other body, the truth is they could have been mobilized to talk to their state representatives, to talk to their congressmen. Their congressmen will then talk to the government of the United States of America, understanding that here is an issue. And I think that that is where we must take the dialogue. I like what she said earlier, it's time for action. If we're going to have the dialogue, where do we go from here? I was so impressed with St. Vincent because they are doing something, because they are creating activities and initiatives and mobilizing. So if you have the mobilization and if you can ensure that the diaspora is aware of the policies, aware of what's going on, aware of the issues that we face from time to time, by having meetings, by having discussions, by having presentations of the respective countries, then they're stronger and able to assist us. Because we know what happens when you talk to your representatives. We're politicians. And we know no matter what we think, our minds changes at times when the vote is about to take place and the people say no. So we understand. We understand the persuasive power. So the truth is we could do more. The diaspora could do more. But we have to assist. We have to work with, we have to ensure, and if we have the media passing on information, because that was a story, for instance, WHTI, that didn't get much coverage.
That's right.
You know why? It didn't mean much to the United States of America. It meant a lot to us. So in America, the story was not being presented to the American and to the diaspora in America, so they didn't know. So we have to create a paradigm that allows for the distribution of information, that they would be adequately aware of the issues that we face, and then they can help us in solving those issues.
Now, when each of your government is running for election, you are able to find us in the diaspora. When you want us to come home and vote for you, you know how to mobilize us. So this idea that we don't know and you can't find us and we don't do this and we don't do that, I don't necessarily buy it, because you know how to get to us when you need us. So the idea of the Diaspora Development Institute, I think that's something that should be taken to when you have your CARICOM meetings. If you're meeting as a group, why can't some kind of white paper or development, some kind of paper developed by all of your governments that is sent to the diaspora? We have organizations that are here in the United States. One of the organizations of which I'm a member is 100 years of age. It's the only continuously functioning organization in the United States, and it's 101 years old. Bahamas would have gotten us by 2 years, but they're non-functional. And I'm from Montserrat, but I claim St. Kitts and Nevis because I grew up there.
Okay.
So my question really is, what can we do in the diaspora so that next year this question does not come up again? That you meet with us, let us know what your needs are, what we can do other than being an ATM machine.
Quick comment and question. The diaspora has split loyalty. They must respond to their resident state or country, in addition to their homeland that they nostalgically and heroically and patriotically respond to. We must put in perspective that our diasporans are participating in diaspora events on Saturdays, Sundays, after work when they have time, because they are all mothers, fathers, employed teachers, and other occupations in the jurisdiction where they live. So it is useful for the diaspora to inform the governments of their expectation of government. It's vice versa, because most of our diasporans are very highly educated. It would be useful to get from our diasporans some form of directives, as we are hearing, that they're quite able to analyze our tourism project and tell us what's wrong with it. Get the act together in the form of investment groups and come in. Remember the following, and I'm going to ask my question. The question is, we speak of one diaspora, but are you aware that as fast as our diasporans leave, the foreign diaspora moves in? Let us think about that. So we have to address ourselves to the dynamism of this diaspora that we're talking about, because there is no definition. What is the diaspora? A group, an institution, or individuals who have left home and come abroad? And how can the governments of our region engage the individuals? That's a difficulty, you know. So can the diaspora then come together, and what are the constraints in the resident state for diasporans to effectively engage at home? And think about it, because there are many constraints.
In the interest of time, I'm going to ask the chairman of CTO just to do a wrap for me. And I also want him to include in that just a statement on the fact that the United States recognizing Cuba now into the real world from their perspective and how that impacts the Caribbean, briefly. Minister?
Thank you very much. Let me just say that if we have to be fair, the governments of the region have done a lot to embrace the diaspora. And I take the point that it is something that is even difficult to define. I mean, we heard of the specific initiatives in St. Lucia. We heard of Tobago, or what has been happening, and I think it is only reasonable to concede that much. Now, it is true there's more that we could do, and I was very happy that you insisted that the ambassador particularize the so-called policies that he wanted to see. I mean, I've been in public life long enough to know this word policy can be anything from an insurance arrangement to a curse word.
A curse word.
It is a very easy thing to hurl at a politician. Policy, very opaque, but you correctly insisted he particularized, and some of the things he said, truthfully, we have no control over. I mean, if in the telegraphic transmission charges and so on, the banks decide that, not the recipient countries. And I mean, But I take the point that we can do more to facilitate the investment. The U.S. government, of course, has these policies now with respect to non-nationals having accounts overseas, all to do with this whole fear they have of financing terrorist activity, etc. I mean, but again, we need to work definitely to see what we can do to facilitate, so we'll do that. You asked about Cuba. I know time is limited. I think, yes, it is the best thing that could happen for Caribbean tourism and indeed for Caribbean society at large. Remember that Cuba is already a very big player in tourism. They get more tourists than anyone else in the Caribbean except the Dominican Republic, 3 million visitors a year. So this notion that it's going to affect tourism, they are already impacting tourism. They are a big player. Countries like Barbados, where the UK is the #1 source market, we are already competing against Cuba, if you want to put it that way. But the point is, as the CTO is founded on the concept of you help the region, you help all of us. If more people are coming to the region via Cuba, it's a good opportunity for all of us. It's nothing at all to fear where Cuba is concerned. You must remember, however, that President Obama did all that he can do with respect to the diplomatic relations. There's still a piece of legislation called the Helms-Burton Act, and there is something called an embargo. So we are still a long way off of seeing Cuba fully integrated into the system. This Congress, and from what little I can see happening in the next one, doesn't look to me like the will be there to repeal Helms-Burton. So we are still going to be making baby steps where this whole Cuba thing is concerned, but we welcome it. And of course, Cuba is also a member of the CTO as well, so we need to not forget that, and we're happy for them, for our members. And once again, thank you very much. I think you've done a wonderful job. Great to hear you, and I will see you next year in Brooklyn at the Nazareth School Hall or somewhere like that.